You can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keep the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How y'all doing today?
Good.
Good. I was very often I'm reminded, it's kind of funny to me, I don't know how funny it'll be to you all, but I haven't shared this one in a while. Some of you old timers may have heard this story, but years ago, this was, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, it's all kind of a blur now, but we had adjusted our main shrine area at Buddha for You, the old location. And so we changed, we'd outgrown one space, we moved it to another area, the temple or the back of the shop there. And so the whole shrine setup was different. And for me, I'm very much a creature of habit. And especially with like ritual and things like that, you do the same thing over and over and over again every day for years. And so it was the first time that I was leading where we had adjusted and moved the whole shrine setup. So just like I did now, I made my offering and I, did my bow and completely smacked my head on the shrine table. You weren't there for that, Jack? I couldn't remember. Yeah, I know I've told it over the years, but and so I hit my head on the shrine, and it was like the funniest thing, because there were people, obviously everybody's there behind me, and you don't know what anybody's thinking ever, but obviously those who have known me a while, they might have found humor in it. Those who were there for the first time, they're like, who's this guy? Just like, because there's a perception, and we do this our entire lives every day, and it's a big part of why we suffer. But there's a perception we all have of people and places and things. And so if you were someone at that time that had been around me for years, you kind of had a better idea of maybe who or how I was. But if you were someone who was brand new, then there's this kind of idea that, well, there's the person up front, and I used to wear all grays at that time, and they're wearing these things that look like monk robes, and well, they have a shaved head. So if they're Buddhist and have a shaved head, then clearly they're smart, or they're just old and bald, one or the other. And no offense to all the elder bald people in here. And so there's this perception and idea that, well, that person's supposed to know what they're doing. And then they smack their head on the shrine. And after that, if you were brand new, it would have been really hard for anybody to take anything I said at any value or seriousness whatsoever. And it was a really cool, fun experience for me, because then I finished my bows, and then I sat down and I just kind of looked out at everybody. I was like, I'm the guy who just hit my head on the shrine. And you just go on. And life is really like that, I'm sure not too many of you roaming around hitting your head on shrines, but we kind of bump into things all day long. Are you all okay on a cushion? There are two here. That way, as people continue to come in, sorry to put you on the spot and call you out, but as they continue to come in, then they won't end up on the roof. Thanks. And so we bump into things all day long, metaphorically or literally. And the problem isn't so much bumping into things. The challenge is, what do we do? How do we respond when we bump into things, when we put ourselves in awkward situations or moments where we could feel incredibly uncomfortable or embarrassed or, foolish or whatever it might be? How do we respond? And can we laugh at ourselves? That to me was one of the most important things, which is something in my younger years, I would have been devastated. That would have just destroyed me and crushed me. And I would have been so wrapped up in what everybody thought about the person who just bumped their head on the shrine, as opposed to just being able to find humor in it. So how do we respond when we do things like that? And then the flip side to that is, when we roam all day long and we're looking at people and places and things, how are we judging them? And is our judgment even remotely close to accurate? And in most cases, it's not. And if you begin to recognize that a majority of your suffering in your life, anyone here suffer? Anger, stress, anxiety, sadness, depression? Anyone free from all of that? Because if you are, then you're in the wrong place, right? But if you begin to recognize that any sort of stress, anger, anxiety, sadness, depression you have or you live with, the Buddha called this dukkha, comes from your perception of something or someone. And that's it. I'm going to say that again because this is really critical to understand, especially for those who might be brand new to Buddhist teachings, that every emotion and feeling of anger, stress, anxiety, sadness, depression, every single one of those comes from your perception of a person, place, or thing. What do we tend to think those emotions come from? What do we tend to think is the cause of all that? Someone else. It's all their fault. I'm totally fine. I have no stress, anger, anxiety, sadness, depression, as long as you completely leave me alone and do everything I want you to do. Right? So this is the first step, really, I think, in kind of waking up to how and why we suffer, is taking ownership of the fact that you have the ability to adjust your perception, which will drastically change how you feel. And that's a very powerful gift that you can give yourself. And it also, I think, and I'll wrap up this thought before we start meditation, it also takes away kind of the power that we give others, thinking that they are responsible for our emotional state. And it gives that power back to us. And that's really transformative and can be really liberating. But then you have to kind of own that and say, okay, this is my responsibility. How am I going to take care of it? And one way of taking care of it is a meditation practice. So we'll start with the meditation. There's a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Don't judge your practice. If you are brand new, you're not going to think nothing. Your brain, your mind, your thoughts don't stop. It's going to continue to race. I will say things periodically to bring you back to present moment. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means your leg hurts, so you have an itch. And good morning to all of you joining us virtually. Thanks for being here. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. Start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samupata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. And that's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape, as often people think it is. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, say, and do. Becoming aware of the present moment can be quite difficult sometimes. Because in this life, we all face tremendous challenges, difficulties, pain, loss, sadness. We face a lot. We go through a lot. And very often at the beginning, people use meditation as something to escape to, as if meditation is going to be the thing that fixes everything. Meditation doesn't fix things. I hate to break it to you, but whatever stresses and craziness and madness you have going on in your life, it didn't go away just because you sat quietly for 20 minutes. I wish it did, but it didn't. All that's waiting for you outside. But what happens is when we allow ourselves time to sit and just breathe, we give ourselves an opportunity for our mind to settle into the present moment. And we can see things for how they are. And then we begin to make changes in our life outside of meditation. The practice is to recognize what is it in our lives that we're thinking, saying, doing that is causing pain and suffering in our lives. learn to become aware of that. And slowly learn to make changes and fix things. To me, the best metaphor I always use is it's like Advil or aspirin or whatever you take for a headache. You have a headache, you pop 2 Advil, you hope the headache goes away. 4 hours later, the headache's back, pop 2 more Advil, hope the headache goes away. And this repeats over and over and over again. We just keep popping the pills to get rid of the headache, instead of looking at what is the cause of the headache. And meditation, Buddhist practice, learning to be mindful of each moment, is learning to understand the causes of these emotions that arise. But it's a practice. If you are brand new, this isn't like a quick fix, one-time deal, and all of a sudden you're done. It's not a 6-week course that you get some certificate at the end and get to call yourself some master. It is a lifelong practice of recognizing your thoughts, words, and actions, and how that impacts your life and the life of those around you. That's why for the last 12, 13 years, I've been calling this Introduction to Buddhism and Meditation, because for me, day one is every day. We are always being introduced to the nature of our own mind. And that's not always easy. So the simplest things are often the hardest. We just have to be nice to people. That's it. We can do that, right? Can all of you? Bridget's like, no, thank you for the honesty. As I glanced that way, I just saw I shouldn't have called you out, but I already did. But I just said we can all be nice to each other. And we're just, no, it's hard, right? It's just so hard. Like, it sounds so simple. This is much easier, and I said this Tuesday, it's much easier in the night classes because, it's 7 to 8. So by the time 8 o'clock, 8:30, you're home, like maybe you've got a couple hours before you get to go to sleep. So maybe if you just like isolate yourself from the world, then you can be nice to people for the rest of the day. But now it's like, not even noon yet. And I'm saying you can all be nice to each other all day long, right? How are you? Good. Thank you for asking. What's your name? Kalina. Thanks for being here. How old are you? 11. You know how to be nice to each other, right? Yeah. Do you have a brother anywhere in the room? How are you? What's your name?
Zach.
How old are you, Zach? 15. So 11 and 15. God bless you, mother. And you two are always nice to each other, right? I love even the seating in the space. I don't know if that was by design or just so happened to where the seats were, I love working with kids. It's always my favorite. When I was 15, when I was your age, oh my God, I was the worst. I was so angry, so depressed, so miserable, so destructive. It was a nightmare. It was not fun. And I wanted to blame everybody for all the pain and suffering and misery in my life. And I thought if everybody else just shut up and did what I wanted, then I'd be perfectly happy. Can you relate to that at all? Yeah. Kalina was it, right? Did I say that right? Does Kalina ever do everything you want her to? No. Is she ever going to do everything you want her to? No. The sooner you embrace that, the easier your life will be. Right? And as a big brother, does he ever do everything you want him to? Is he ever going to do that? No. So for the future of your lifelong relationship, if you both just accept and embrace the fact that you're going to piss each other off the rest of your life, you'll be so much better off. See how easy that is? Right? You have your whole life to work on it. The rest of us, we're all like old. You two are you're just starting out. But it really is, it's that simple. Meaning 11 and 15, we're not 11 or 15 in here. But it's the same thing for us. We all have that other person, many of them are your brothers and sisters, younger or older, right? And they're not 11 and 15 anymore, but they're still driving you crazy. So work on it now so you don't end up old like us and sitting in one of these classes, all right? But that's the thing, is we all have these people in our lives that frustrate us. And can we just embrace the fact that they're living their own life and doing the best they can, facing their own challenges? And if we open our heart, we open our mind to just love people for how they are, life gets a little simpler. So thanks for responding. I hope I didn't embarrass you too much. So I'm going to pause there and open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, I kind of brushed over you before, but welcome to everybody joining us virtually. Thanks for being here. Feel free to, there's a chat box on your screen. Feel free to say hello, introduce yourself. I see we have a couple good mornings and then a good evening from someone in Poland. So nice to sit with people in Poland. So thanks for being here. Questions, meditation, Buddhist practice. I really just prefer to respond to what's on your mind, and we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions. Yeah.
How do we change our relationship with physical pain and discomfort, which feels so external and out of our control sometimes?
Yeah, such a good question. Just to repeat it for those who didn't hear in the back, how do we change our, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I'll paraphrase here, but how do we change our relationship to physical pain, which seems so external at times? And what was the last part of what you said?
Just seems like we don't have a lot of control over it.
Seems like we don't have a lot of control over it. We almost have no control over it. Now, I say almost, meaning that obviously without getting into specifics, each example of someone's physical pain is different. Certain physical pains are just chronic and they're not going to go away. Maybe they're only going to get worse. Some physical pain, there are things that we can potentially do things, to help it, but each situation is different. I think the first step, and when I look at the Buddhist teachings on suchness, which is the word tathagata means suchness, things as they are, part of changing your relationship to physical pain is embracing and accepting the fact that we will live with, and sometimes forever, physical pain. Very often that is so difficult for us to do because there's this idea that we don't like physical pain. It's not pleasant, right? There's pleasant, there's unpleasant, and neutral, as the Buddha taught. And physical pain is unpleasant. And when we're in something that's unpleasant, what do we want to do? Stop it, escape it, make it pleasant. And so there is, in that moment, craving, desire. The Buddha says craving and desire leads to suffering. So there's the physical pain, bad enough. Then there's the focus on physical pain, which often makes physical pain worse. Then there's the frustration, the emotional struggle and challenge with physical pain, which makes things even worse. So embracing and accepting physical pain is the first step of whatever it may be. Hey, this is what I have. This sucks. I remember, and this is maybe not even I'm sure not a fair example, especially for anybody. I know a lot of people here do deal with chronic physical pain. But I remember when I was probably 13 years old, it was a baseball tournament in Vegas, and I got spiked in the leg. Still have like a little scar from it. And it was pretty early on in the game, and it was bad. And when I focused on it, I was in pain. When we were winning during the game, I felt great. We were losing, it hurt. Back and forth throughout the game, I had this like gash in my leg, bleeding, and pain came and went, depending upon whether I focused on it or how I felt about the whole situation. Game's done, we win, I'm celebrating, everything's wonderful, I don't feel any pain. Then I get in the car to go to the urgent care hospital, wherever we went. Oh, it hurts so bad. And I've always reflected on that, not just with physical pain, but also with emotional pain, because this response is really very similar. What we feed gets stronger. And that's why, for me, I default back to the first thing I said, which is, can we start with just saying, I have chronic physical pain? And welcome that with a smile. Hard to do. Because there's that constant craving desire, and resistance. Again, in some cases, we can fix things, and in some cases, I'm guessing similar to what you're asking about, you've probably done and are doing everything physically possible to physically fix things, and there's still tremendous physical pain, and that sucks. Can we welcome it? Hello, physical pain. Nice to be with you today. That's the first step, and that can take a while. In Buddhism, there's a teaching called the second arrow, and again, also for physical or emotional pain. But the first arrow is the thing that hits us, whether it's physical pain, whether it's someone says something to us we don't like, right? There's that first arrow. It just kind of stings. It hurts. And then there's the view and judgment and perception of that first arrow. Why physical pain? Now I'm angry that I have physical pain. Now I'm sad because I'm angry because I have physical pain. Now I'm depressed because I'm sad, because I'm angry that I have physical pain. The first arrow is the physical pain. Can we just leave it at that and not add all the additional emotional stuff on top? And that again has to do with us changing our relationship to whatever it may be, physically or emotionally, and welcoming it. People are mean to you. Welcome that. And I'm within reason. Safety first, always. Trauma, abuse, remove yourself. But I'm just talking, when I say that, day-to-day little things that trigger us, that frustrate us, the people serving our coffee, the people on the customer service phones, the people at the grocery stores in front of you writing a check, whatever it might be. Can we just welcome those things with a smile and say, this is their life. I will not allow their life to ruin my life. So, yeah. Buddha said we get birth, we get aging, not even to grow old. He just said we get aging because we don't all get to grow old. We get sickness, and then we pass. This is what's guaranteed to all of us. So try to find enjoyment in what we have while we're here. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
So I'm pretty new. I've noticed that I don't know if I've ever really met like an evangelical Buddhist.
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of curious. There seems to be a lot of focus in Buddhism on, coming to your own conclusion about your own mind, and then that kind of radiating out to other people. But at the same time, there's a lot of Buddhists that are teachers and trying to spread, the practice and the insights.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious if you
Sure.
have any thoughts about that, or what's in the tradition as far as spreading the.
Great question. I've got about 6 months worth of thoughts on that. So I'll try to sum it up into 3 minutes. To repeat for those in the back, maybe you didn't hear virtually, the question was, to paraphrase, you're pretty new to Buddhism and you don't see much of like evangelical Buddhists. But at the same time, there are people who teach Buddhism and share Buddhism. And you also said that it seems to you to be a practice that people utilize to kind of go inward, and then that radiates out. But then there are people who teach it, share it, spread it. And just my general thoughts on that, yeah? So, you mean you didn't see the big sign on the corner that like said, come here now for Buddhism 101? Our sign spinner, flagging you down, and yeah, I'm not kidding. I've got years worth of comments on this, so I'm trying to filter through a million of them and see what's best. Years ago, there was it wasn't like a Nobel Prize, but there was another very well-known global award like that, right? A little couple steps down from a Nobel Prize, and it had to do with religious groups, and they decided to give it to the Buddhists. They couldn't find any Buddhist place to come and accept the award, right? There's an expression in Buddhism that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that expression, I think, really gets to the heart of your question, which is the most important thing with Buddhist practice, especially those who are new, and my master used to teach a lot about this, is to understand that all Buddhism is a mirror. And it helps you, what's your name? Andrew?
Yeah.
It helps Andrew learn about Andrew. And no one else can tell you or teach you about Andrew. Any religion, any philosophy, any spiritual path can give you, it's like, the finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. We can all give you ways to look back at Andrew, but Andrew has to do the work. And Andrew can't do the work until Andrew's ready to do the work. So to be Buddhist and try to drag people in the door and force you to look at why you get happy and sad and angry and joyful, that, you got to be ready for that. And those who really understand, I think, the beauty of Buddhist teachings, who are sharing it, and believe me, there's a lot out there who don't and do the exact opposite of what I'm saying, even in Buddhism. I can touch on that as well. So I don't want to paint it as the perfect little religion out there, because it's not. There's just as much of abuse and everything else, and patriarchy and oppression and everything within Buddhism as well. But Andrew has to be ready for that. And so Buddhist places, teachers, monks, nuns, temples, monasteries, spiritual centers are there for when you're ready to approach it. We don't even have a sign, right? And we have a cross on top, so we're really trying to confuse people, right? And I think that the Buddha himself, and this is really where it comes from, there's an expression in Buddhism that says the Buddha wasn't Buddhist. One, he was Hindu, right? He was born 2,500 years ago, so 500 years before Christ. So Buddhism didn't exist when he was born. He was born in India, and he was raised as a Hindu in Hindu religion. And then he began to teach. He began to teach what he saw as the cause of our suffering, our struggles, our challenges. And he taught us to have loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity, and to be generous and moral and patient. That's what he taught, which then became called Buddhism. And he was very clear, he's not a god, right? He was just some dude who figured out why he suffered, and he taught that. So it really stems from that. And I think that all of us, kind of going back to my earlier point, have a time in our lives where we wouldn't have been ready to explore the craziness of our own mind. You're here now, and I don't know, maybe you'll never come back, but seemingly, I don't know if enjoying is the right word, but benefiting, getting something out of this. But maybe 2 years ago, you'd have been like, dude, I'm not going to that weird Buddhist stuff, right? So we all have stages in our lives where we're ready to explore our own mind. And if you really understand, I think, what Buddhism is about, I'm not saying perfecting, practicing it, but if you understand what it's about, you understand that you don't push it at people. And back to your point about expressing it outwardly is, often people ask, in fact, one of our college kids Monday night, right? So we started 7 years ago, the nation's first and only Buddhist fraternity at San Diego State, and it's co-ed. And one of the students asked Monday night, she said, how do I explain this to my parents that I'm not part of some hippy-dippy weird thing, right? And I said, well, good luck with that. But that question comes up a lot about how do I share this with others? How do I explain to family and friends and loved ones that I'm going to this Buddhist thing? And I say, you don't need to. If anything, say, yeah, I'm doing some meditation. I'm learning this Buddhist thing, which is helping me be kinder and happier with myself, and leave it at that. Don't treat it like it's a movie that you have to tell everyone about how you loved or hated the movie, or that it's a restaurant that you're trying to draw people into. The best way, and the Buddha said very clearly, the greatest gift, he said, we suffer because of greed, anger, ignorance. And he said, the root cause of our suffering, greed, is caused by generosity. And he said, the number one thing you can give is you give the Dharma, which is the teachings. And I don't mean by sitting and teaching it, I mean by practicing it. So the greatest gift that you can give your family, your friends, your loved ones, your community, this world, is to practice kindness. That's all you have to do. But it's hard because the ego comes in and says, well, I want to explain what this is because I love it and it's helping me. They're not interested. And if they are, maybe they'll see you're radiating a little kinder and gentler than you were before. They're like, are you okay? Are you, And then yeah, this is helping me. And maybe they're interested, maybe they should. I know that wasn't the nature of your question, but I'm just kind of expanding on when we share this with others and how it's, because obviously for 2,500 years, Buddhism has spread all over the world. Started in India, a couple hundred years later, goes south, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia. 500-600 years later, goes China, Japan, Korea. 1,000 years after he dies, it goes into Tibet. 100 plus years ago, it makes its way into the US. And so this is only traveled by people sharing the Dharma. So it's a balance of loving to share it, but not trying to reel them in. Does that help? Yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. Oh yeah, and Cynthia shared, whenever possible, choose kindness. Practice kindness, so simple yet so powerful. Thanks from Sedona. We'll do one more question. Meditation, Buddhist practice, whatever's on your mind. Yeah.
My name is Leslie, and I get these physical signals that are quite strange. I mean, I look at them and I guess good. I think they're serving a purpose, but it's really weird. And when I'm thinking about something and I'm not thinking about it in a healthy manner way or whatever, I get a tightness in my chest. And when I look and think about what I experienced and and how I feel about it, and I breathe it in a peaceful, kind way, I get a fuzziness in my chest.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of weird. I'm like, I wonder what it's my body signaling.
Yeah. So the comment, and just to repeat, is that you've noticed in your life that you get physical signals based on your thoughts or actions, and that when you are, thinking something that's maybe angry or negative, you get like a tightness in your chest, and when you're thinking positive or doing something, kindness, that you get kind of like that warm, fuzzy feeling. And I think it's important for all of us to pay attention to that. An example I always give is when we help people, like truly help people, even if we know it helps us, we benefit from it and we feel good doing it. But when we help people, we feel that. And when we harm people or don't help people, we feel that also. And I think that, that's another kind of tying it, similar to the question earlier about Buddhism, is that what Buddha wanted us to do, I believe, his name was Siddhartha, but what he wanted us to do was to become aware of what's going on with our karma, meaning what we think, say, and do. Karma is just action. So karma is not what we get, karma is what we give. We give thoughts, we give words, we give actions. And he wanted us to pay attention to that. And if you're seeing a very consistent pattern of feeling kind of warm, fuzzy, and good when you do good, and feeling a tightness and a just closed off when you do bad, that's wonderful. Because then you got no excuse.
Yeah, I don't.
And so the practice is to then recognize that, like, we could have a negative thought, an angry thought, and that's not the worst thing in the world. But what happens from those negative, angry thoughts is those turn into negative, angry words or negative, angry actions. It's bad energy. And if from that thought, we can feel that tightness or whatever that, could be anxiety or anger, whatever that, kind of visceral reaction is physically from the thoughts. And we can pause for a moment, take some deep breaths, and allow those thoughts to settle and not act on every one of those thoughts. Because here's a newsflash for you. And I know this is hard for us to grasp. You don't have to act on every single thought you have. In fact, for most of us, we should probably act on very few thoughts we actually have. Right? And I'm just speaking for myself. I can't speak for anybody else, right? But for me, the most beautiful thing of this practice all these years has been the recognition of the thoughts as they arise, not trying to fix them, change them, control them, manipulate them, or pretend they're not there, but to recognize the thoughts as they arise and not act on it. That's a life changer. Years ago, there was a guy in prison, and he said if he had just thought for one more second before he did what he did, he wouldn't be spending his whole life in prison. And we can all relate to that on some level. That if we had just thought for one more second before we yelled back or punched back or, responded back in some way that was potentially harmful to self or others, if we had just thought for one more second and let that thought just go back to where it came from, which is nowhere, then we'll stop doing so many things that harm ourselves and others. So, yeah, thanks for sharing. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic and their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 15 years ago to bring Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and share it with those who show up. So again, thanks for showing up. Every night we have different practices going on, different unenlightened people leading their approach to Buddhist practice. We have a strong recovery sangha, so anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, that meets a few times a week here as well, also online still. We have some of those virtually. Family sangha for parents, kids, teens, toddlers, that's once a month. All of that's on the website. The family group does require RSVP just because we cap it downstairs for the number of kids we have. First Saturday of the month, and so it actually, this was really beautiful. So first Saturday of the month, which is today, for the last 10 plus years, we've had the Day of Silence. Obviously, we were closed for 16 months, so we didn't do that. We started 4 or 5 months ago doing the Day of Silence retreats, but this is the first time that we've actually done the full one and finished downstairs. So it was cool to have 10, 12 people, whatever it was, finishing up downstairs right now while we're all up here. So you have a whole month to work up to that if you ever want to do 4 hours of silence. If you are new to meditation and 20 minutes of silence is absolute torture, then by all means, throw yourself into 4 hours of it. It's phenomenal. And the beauty of sitting silently for 4 hours is it makes 20 minutes that much easier. And in case you're afraid, it's not like 4 hours straight. There are about 20 to 25-minute meditation sessions that's broken up with a 5-minute break. There's a walking meditation outside, a cleaning meditation. So it's kind of broken up a little bit into sections. So that also requires an RSVP, also on the website. Buddha for You is downstairs if you need anything. We do have, I think I saw Kira, super hot outside, I know, so we're doing our best to water and garden and do all that. So if you want to help out with that out front here, that would be phenomenal. I don't know if they did it this morning or not, but the front of temple, again, that sidewalk from the palm trees gets to be a mess pretty quickly. So if anybody wants to stick around and sweep, that would be beautiful. Everyone asks about how to enter nirvana or like working on enlightenment. And the best way to get enlightened is to sweep around the temple. So if you want the fast track, just grab a broom and start sweeping. If not, you can just keep showing up and listen to me ramble for a while. So thanks all for being here. Have a good day. And virtually, thank you all for being here from Sedona and Poland and San Diego and everywhere else you are.